Alright guys, and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be giving you a Wrath of the Lich King Classic Paladin leveling guide. It's going to be relevant for people playing on fresh servers and people jumping straight into Northrend at level 70. These are the topics we're going to cover. First of all, tips and tricks, the best talents and glyphs to get, the best playstyle to do, weapon progression, and lastly, the stat priority. If you like the video guys, please do subscribe to the channel. All subscribers get access to my subscriber only content. Just go to my subscriber only video trailer on my channel page. And the first thing people are probably wondering is, should I level in protection or retribution? Now, there's a number of different ways to answer this question. Long story short, in my opinion, if you're solo leveling in the open world, I think retribution is going to be faster. It simply kills mobs incredibly fast and it's very bursty. And it's also incredibly efficient. To make protection take over retribution, you really need to be pulling loads and loads of mobs, like 10 mobs, for protection to take over, but you're not really going to have that luxury over time when you're doing questing, especially if you're playing on a fresh server when there's competition for mobs. However, if you're leveling either on a fresh server or in a non-fresh server when Wrath of the Lich King launches, and you're doing dungeons all the way, you're probably better off going protection, because obviously it's going to be easier to get groups, and leveling as a protection paladin is very overpowered in dungeons. So my advice to people who are playing a protection paladin right now in TBC, I recommend trying to get some ret off-spec gear, if you can, but if you can't get that, then just level in dungeons instead. So let's begin with some tips and tricks. If you're boosting a paladin and don't already have some decent gear because you haven't been raiding in TBC, I recommend picking up the Arcanite Ripper. This is something that drops in the Wrath of the Lich King pre-patch event from a boss in Karazhan. And according to old Wowhead comments, it is guaranteed loot, 100% drop chance, so probably quite easy to get that one. Remember that weapon DPS on weapons is way more important now. Like 0.2% slower weapon or faster weapon isn't going to mean that much if the weapon DPS is less. And most weapons that a paladin's going to get, you know, your two-handed axes, maces and swords, they're going to be over 3-second weapon speed anyway. Remember that you can use Divine Shield and Blessing of Protection to prevent ground damage. All you have to do is use it just before you're about to hit the ground. Just make sure you don't use it too early, because then the buff will fall off before you hit the ground. This is actually a seriously underrated little trick, because there's so many irritating in Northrend where you're just like halfway up a cliff and you have to get down the cliff and you have to go all the way around so you don't die, whereas Paladin can just jump off, pop Divine Shield and Bob's your uncle. Now if you are going to be leveling in protection, I recommend going for the Shield Spike for AoE farming and also getting a greater rune of warding. For my 6th tip, I've got a stop casting exorcism macro. Now exorcism changes in Wrath to become a casted ability, however, when you get Art of War procs, you will make it instant. It also makes your Flashes of Light instant too, and you should be using them mostly, honestly, while solo leveling on Flashes of Light anyway. But what this does is it prevents you from accidentally doing a hard cast exorcism. And if you're leveling purely through dungeons in protection spec in Wrath of the Lich King, you may want to pick up Figurine of a Colossus, although I would only recommend that for people who are either, you know, leveling on a fresh server, who have less time to get gear, or people who are boosting a character to level 70, because honestly, if you're fully decked out in at least like Black Temple Sunwell gear, actually probably better off getting DPS trinkets. So things like strength trinkets, like strength pops or strength procs or attack power pops, because obviously spell power also scales of attack power now, and you probably have enough avoidance and block value and rating just from your gear that you don't need trinkets, so you may as well get the extra DPS to clear the dungeons faster. And if you're leveling on a fresh server and you're leveling on the Horde side, don't forget the Blood Elf Paladin quest, because it gives the Scourge Bane, which is an extremely powerful trinket. It gives you 150 attack power on undead and demons, which, let's be honest, is most of Outland. It lasts 5 minutes on a 30-minute cooldown, but guys, that's even more powerful than an elixir of demon slaying. It's very, very useful for when you're leveling in Outland. I'd also recommend preparing 25 quests. Now if you subscribe to the channel and go to my channel page and go to the trailer, in the description of that video there is a quest list of the best 25 quests to prep. It's a very fast route where you can get 25 quests turned in a matter of a few minutes. But if you want to take it a step further guys, I do have a members only guide that will get you 1.7 million experience before Northrend, which will get you a few bars into level 71. Now if you have become a member and you're requesting access to the guide, go into my Discord and message American Wordsmith, and he will give you access if you provide sufficient evidence that you become a member or a subscriber on Twitch. Now, my last shameless plug, if you're looking for a really fast leveling guide, you definitely want to get Rested XP. The guys working on this have been leveling in their basement for the past 3 months. They're world record holding speed runners, so they definitely know a thing or two about leveling extremely fast in Wrath of the Lich King. So guys, when it comes to talents, I'll first of all show the build I'd recommend for people who are solo leveling in Retribution spec. First I want to max out Benediction, great mana efficiency talent. Improve Judgments. Remember, Judgment will cleave with Seal of Command now, so we definitely want a lower cooldown on that to cleave more. When you're low level, you can put 3 points in Heart of Crusader, but we're going to be putting 2 points here later on when we can pick up more points than Seal of Pure when we've got Divine Storm later. Although, to be fair, low level, we're probably going to get 2 points in Improved Blessing and Might, 1 point in here, and then 1 in Seal of Command. You want to get Seal of Command as fast as humanly possible, because that's when you can start cleaving. And you definitely want the Pursuit of Justice for the movement speed increasing effect. From here, we want to max out Conviction, get Sanctity of Battle, and then obviously Sanctified Retribution. I prefer to go for the crit talents that I haven't finished off while leveling, rather than going for two-handed weapon spec, but if you prefer two-handed weapon spec, then go for that. But when you're leveling, you really want crit, because obviously crit is extremely nice. And when you do pick up a talent Vengeance, it's going to increase a proc chance of Vengeance. Because you want to be in a place where you have so much crit that Vengeance is pretty much stacked 3 times, and it's constantly up. Put 1 point in weapon spec to get down the tree, going to max out Vengeance, finish off weapon spec, and then get Art of War straight away. No, actually no, to be fair, I think Judgment of the Wise is probably better to get straight away, since the mana return, it's going to give you 25% mana back on your Judgments, which is very, very nice for your efficiency. From here, you've got tough choices. You can go for extra survivability by getting Art of War early, or you can get Fanaticism earlier. It's really up to you. I think my preference probably is to go for Art of War for those really sneaky and cheeky instant flash of lights, and then I'd max out Fanaticism. Then I like to go for Sanctified Wrath, great for the reduced cooldown on Avenging Wrath, but only put 1 point in it because you want to get Crusader Strike as fast as humanly possible, and then start putting points in Sheath of Life, because this converts your attack power into, or healing power essentially. Well, technically it's increasing spell power and therefore the power of your heals. And also when your heals crit, they'll do 6% of the amount healed over 12 seconds. So this combined with your instant flashes of light that you're going to pop either in the middle of combat or at the end of a fight, you're basically always going to be able to top your health up without that much of a mana cost, and your heals are more powerful now. Then you're going to max out Swift Retribution and get Righteous Defense, and then obviously Divine Storm, but you want to get Divine Storm as fast as humanly possible. So don't be putting points anywhere else, like get Divine Storm straight away at level 60. Now from here I like to max out Divine Strength, so I get really good strength scaling. When you get this talent, this is when you really do have to just play strength gear, because obviously all your strength is going to scale off this talent. Then I'm going to finish off Sanctified Wrath and Crusade. Now if you put 2 points in Seal of the Pure, and take 1 point out of Heart of the Crusader, this is the maximum DPS that you can achieve at level 70 in a raiding environment. From here it's more personal preference, because there aren't any talents here that are going to dramatically increase your DPS, particularly your leveling speed, because obviously we care more about cleave DPS, because Seals of the Pure only increases the damage of your single targeting seals and judgments. Personally I like to go for the reduced pushback on my heals in the rare circumstance that I do need to just hard cast a heal and I'm in trouble. We can also get Healing Light, which is going to increase my heals of our Flash of Lights by 12%. And obviously the Holy Lights and Holy Shocks too, but we're not going to use Holy Shock because we don't get that spell. But if you want to go for more single target DPS, if you're going to do more dungeons and stuff, then yeah, you'd go for Seals of the Pure instead. Now when it comes to glyphs, what you can get in a pre-patch, not going to lie, is pretty terrible. Okay, the best options really are Seal of Command and Glyph of Judgment. You know, 10% extra judgment damage, Seal of Command returns 8% of your mana whenever you use a judgment. Not incredibly bad, and then you can also get the increased exorcism damage if you want. However, the minor gems, they're pretty decent to be fair. Sense Undead, 1% extra damage when you're sensing undead on undead targets. Blessing of Might just increases its duration when you cast it on yourself, so you don't have to refresh it all the time. And Lay of Hand ones just are going to reduce the cooldown by 5 minutes. Now, if you're not leveling when Wrath of the Lich King does launch, you're leveling later in Wrath of the Lich King's lifetime, pick up Glyph of Holy Wrath. Reduce cooldown on that is quite nice, and then get that with Seal of Command. That'd be my advice. Now, this is the leveling build I recommend for people who are just going to tank dungeons. Honestly, if leveling on a fresh server, I wouldn't even spec in protection first of all. I would actually go down and get Seal of Command. So this is like the earliest good cleaving ability that you can get, which is going to increase your damage when you do dungeons and obviously make you do dungeons faster. But then you probably want to respec when you get access to Holy Shield. But honestly, I do actually think that having Seal of Command is better than having Hammer of Righteousness. You can obviously get Hammer of Righteousness at level 71, but you know, if you're leveling up to get to level 70, prioritize getting Seal of Command over Hammer of Righteousness. This is because, very simply, Seal of Command is going to provide more cleave DPS than Hammer of Righteousness is ever going to, because it cleaves on judgments, but also all of your melee attacks. And because, as a Paladin, you're using a faster weapon, it causes your Seal of Command to actually cleave quite a lot. Especially when you get very cheeky Reckoning procs. And again, the talent options aren't really astounding, but you can get Glyph of Seal of Command again, Glyph of Righteousness, which basically allows you to always get your taunts off, because that is the spell hit cap. Well, actually no, it's the normal hit cap, or whatever. And if you're not leveling fresh, definitely get the Hammer of Righteousness glyph, because that's going to cause it to attack an additional target. Now let's talk about a playstyle when it comes to solo leveling as a Retribution Paladin. Our first thing to do is clump up 4 enemies. Now 4 enemies is quite important because that's how many targets your Divine Storm is going to hit, and I find when you start pulling more than 4 mobs, your health starts to drop too much and your efficiency starts to, well, get worse, because you have to spend mana to heal yourself too much, and then you start dropping mana and have to drink and all that kind of thing. We don't really want to be doing that. So I like to get 4 mobs all together on my mount. I'm always using Seal of Command, and I'm always using Judgment of the Light. Then this is the priority, your Divine Storm. Your Divine Storm is also going to proc Seal of Command, by the way, so that's huge damage. Then Judgment, then Crusader Strike, and then lastly Holy Wrath if we have it available. Most of the time I'm not going to use Consecration, because it costs a lot of mana, and honestly the mobs, when you're very well geared, they just seem to really, well, die in a few cycles of this rotation, and Consecration doesn't really feel like it's worth it, it's not really doing that much damage. But by all means, if you're doing bigger pulls, then Consecration will be more useful. Remember to use Hand of Reckoning to actually help with pulls, and then when you're not using it to help with pulls, remember to use it in your rotation, because it does actually deal damage when the target isn't already targeting you. In fact, when you're low level, when you can only take on about 1 or 2 mobs, I actually put Hand of Reckoning, since off the global cooldown, in my other abilities to make sure I'm always using it, just for the extra damage. I then prioritise consuming my Art of War procs with Flash of Light to keep my health topped up, so I never have to stop to eat or to heal myself up after a fight. And normally, yeah, you can just run to the next mob when you're always consuming Art of War with Flash of Light. By all means, if you want the extra damage, you can use them with Exorcism, but it's going to be slightly less efficient in my experience. But if you're doing if you're taking on 1 target, then yeah, you can throw in an Exorcism, that's fine. Remember to always be using a Blessing of Might too. When it comes to weapon progression, guys, we've made a huge behemoth weapon progression list for every single class in the game, from level 1 all the way up until level 80. All you have to do is subscribe to the channel, go to my sub-trailer, and it's on there. Now lastly, let's talk about what gear and stats are prioritised while leveling. Now this is going to be for solo leveling as a Rep Paladin, because if you're doing the tanking route, then it's pretty simple to work out, innit? Just get the tank gear. But when you're solo leveling, you definitely want to prioritise getting strength and crit pieces, and then haste pieces are nice to have, but crit is always going to be better, obviously for the vengeance procs, and it just simulates more damage anyway. But the thing I definitely recommend, guys, is to always get strength gear, strength plate gear over agility or mail gear. The reason for that is, first of all, it has more armour, so it makes you less squishy, which means you take less damage, which means it's going to increase your efficiency because you have to heal less, and also because obviously that gear has strength on it. And with Divine Strength, we get 15% extra strength, so normally it ends up scaling better anyway. If you want hit cap on mobs that are 2 levels higher than you, then maintain 6% hit chance, But if you know that you're never going to be taking on mobs 2 levels higher than you, then you can get away, obviously, with 3%. But personally, I would always recommend to keep 6%. Expertise is also nice to have. You can find it sometimes on some leveling pieces, but normally the expertise gear piece is not going to be better than your Sunwell gear. However, you know, if again, like you're leveling on a fresh server, or you've had less time to gear because you boosted a character, then the expertise pieces will be nice to pick up while you are leveling. But anyway guys, that's where I'm going to end the video there. My name is MetaGoblin. Until the next video, ciao.